Story 1. My aunt always said her house had a voice. I'd laughed it off as a charming way to describe the groans and sighs of a century-old Victorian home. I'm not laughing anymore. I agreed to house sit for a month while she and my uncle were in Europe. The first week was blissfully quiet. I worked on my laptop, drank their expensive wine, and enjoyed the solitude. I got used to the house's usual symphony, the shudder of pipes in the walls, the mournful creak of the floorboards upstairs, the way the wind would sometimes whistle through the window frames like a person humming. It was on the 8th night that a new instrument joined the orchestra, a faint scratching. It started in the kitchen, seemingly from inside the wall behind the refrigerator. I assumed it was a mouse, made a mental note to buy some traps, and thought nothing more of it. But the next day, the scratching was in the living room wall, and the day after that, it was in the hallway. It was subtle, almost too quiet to be sure of, but it was there, and it seemed to be following me. Then, small things started to disappear. A single spoon from the drying rack, the TV remote I'd left on the arm of the sofa, my favorite gray sock, gone from the laundry basket. Each time, I'd spend an hour searching, only to give up and blame my own carelessness. It's a big house after all, easy to misplace things. But a cold knot of anxiety was tying itself in my stomach. The house no longer felt empty. It felt occupied. The breaking point came last night. I was watching a movie, volume turned up to drown out the unsettling quiet. Suddenly, a frantic scratching erupted from the wall directly behind my head. It was loud, desperate, like an animal trapped and trying to claw its way out. I froze, my blood turning to ice. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. A profound silence fell over the room, broken a moment later by a soft thud from the floor above me. That was no mouse. That was no pipe. My heart hammered against my ribs. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a cast-iron fireplace poker, and crept out of the living room. Each step on the grand staircase seemed to scream my location. "Hello!" I called out, my voice a pathetic, trembling whisper. No answer. I checked every bedroom, every closet, my weapon held out in front of me. Nothing. All the doors were closed, the windows locked. I was about to convince myself I was going crazy when I saw it. At the end of the hall, the small, unassuming door to the attic, which my aunt had told me was always bolted shut, was now slightly ajar. A cold draft snaked out from the dark opening. With a hand that shook so badly I could barely control it, I pushed the door open. The pull-down ladder was already extended, waiting. Slowly, I climbed, the poker feeling flimsy and useless. The attic smelled of dust and decay and something else, something metallic and sour. In the far corner, tucked behind an old wardrobe, was a small nest made of dirty blankets and my aunt's old clothes. Beside it lay my missing spoon, the TV remote, and my single gray sock. And there, carved into the wooden wall, were hundreds of tally marks. Below them, scratched in with what looked like a nail, were fresh words that made my legs give out. "You have a lovely laugh." I didn't scream. I just scrambled backwards, fell down the ladder, and ran. I ran out of the house and didn't stop until I was in my car, speeding away, leaving the house and its secret voice behind forever. Story 2. The silence was the reason I bought this house. It was miles from the nearest town, nestled in a thicket of old-growth pines, and the only sound was the wind sighing through the branches. For the first month, it was paradise. I worked from home, enjoyed the solitude, and felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The house was old, full of the usual creaks and groans that old timbers make. I got used to them. They were part of its character, the house's way of breathing around me. Then came a new sound. It started subtly, a faint, rhythmic tapping from the empty guest room upstairs. It sounded almost like a leaky faucet, but I'd had the plumbing checked and completely replaced before I moved in. I'd go up to investigate, and the moment my foot hit the top step, it would stop. I'd stand in the doorway of the dusty, vacant room, listening to nothing but my own heartbeat. Feeling foolish, I blamed it on a loose branch hitting the window pane, even though the nearest tree was a good 20 feet away. A week later, I came downstairs one morning to find a single, smooth, gray stone sitting in the exact center of my kitchen table. It wasn't mine. I live alone and hadn't had a visitor in over a month. I'm meticulous about my space. I would have noticed it. A chill, colder than the morning air, trickled down my spine. I picked it up, feeling its unnatural coolness, and threw it as far as I could into the woods. That night, the tapping was back, But it wasn't just in the guest room anymore. It felt like it was moving. First from the guest room, then the hall, then the top of the stairs. Tap, tap, tap. A slow, deliberate procession. I locked myself in my bedroom, my ears straining against the silence between the sounds. I told myself it was an animal, a squirrel in the walls, anything to keep the raw panic at bay. The next morning, I woke with a gasp. Sitting on my nightstand, inches from my head, was the same smooth gray stone. There was no mistaking it. It was identical. My breath hitched. This was impossible. The doors were locked, the windows secured. I hadn't left my room. The rational part of my brain screamed that I was losing my mind, that isolation was making me see things. Maybe I was even sleepwalking. But the primal, terrified part knew better. Something was in my house, something that could move without a sound, that could get through locked doors. It wasn't trying to hurt me, not yet. It was playing with me. It was showing me that it could get to me, anywhere, anytime. Last night, I didn't hear the tapping. The silence was absolute, heavy, and more terrifying than any sound. I sat on my couch in the dark, clutching a heavy iron poker, my eyes scanning the shadows. I must have been there for hours. Just as the first hint of dawn began to gray the windows, I heard a new sound. It wasn't a tap. It was a soft, long scrape coming from the hallway, just outside the living room door. It sounded like fingernails being dragged slowly, deliberately, across the hardwood floor, getting closer, and then it stopped, right outside the door. And I've been sitting here ever since, waiting. Story 3. The house has been in my family for 3 generations. I know its language, the groan of the pipes in winter, the sigh of the floorboards under the summer heat. I've lived here alone for 2 years now, and the silence has become a comfortable blanket. Until last night. I was washing the dishes, the water drumming against the ceramic, when I heard it. A soft, dry cough from the living room. It was so distinct, so specific, the exact wheezing sound my grandfather used to make before he'd tell a long story. He passed away in this very house a decade ago. I froze, my hands submerged in sudsy water. My mind raced, trying to find a logical source. The house settling, a branch against the window, but it sounded so human, so familiar. I turned off the tap, and the silence that rushed back in felt different, heavy, tense. I called out a tentative, "Hello?" But only the hum of the refrigerator answered. Shaking it off as a trick of memory, I finished my chores and went to bed, making sure the deadbolt was firmly in place. Sleep didn't come easily. I lay in the dark, straining my ears, cataloging every creak and whisper of the old house. That's when I heard the second sound, a faint, rhythmic scratching at the bottom of my bedroom door. It was the same sound my old dog Buster used to make when he wanted to be let in. A little scrape, a pause, another scrape. My heart hammered against my ribs. Buster was buried in the backyard 7 years ago. I stared at the dark slit under the door, expecting to see a shadow, to hear a whine, but there was nothing, just that light, insistent scratching. I didn't sleep at all. This morning, exhaustion is a thick fog in my head. I've checked every window, every door. They're all locked, just as I left them. There's no sign of a break-in, no footprints in the dust on the porch. I'm starting to think I'm losing my mind. The stress of being alone, maybe? As I stand in the kitchen making coffee, my phone rings. I pick it up, but the line is dead, just static. I'm about to hang up when a voice cuts through the hiss. It's my mother's voice, clear as day. "Did you forget to lock the back door?" she asks, her tone laced with that familiar, gentle chiding. A cold dread, slick and oily, coats my insides. I'm staring directly at the back door, and the bolt is slid firmly shut. But the worst part, the part that makes me want to scream until my lungs tear, is that my mother has been gone for 5 years. I drop the phone. It clatters to the floor, and from upstairs, from my own bedroom, I hear a new sound. It's a soft, curious humming. The exact tune I was humming to myself just a few minutes ago while waiting for the coffee to brew. Something is in my house. It's learning.